There's a piece that's not quite adding up from my childhood. Good Times was a good illustration of poverty for black people, but it didn't quite tap into the communities overrun with roaches and rats and the smell of urine. Could have been a paid actor in the projects. Because I lived in the methamine with my mom during the summers and during the holidays, and it was roaches everywhere. Roaches next door, roaches upstairs, roaches downstairs. I remember one time I had to tippy toe across the floor to get to the bed so that I wouldn't step on a roach. I had to stand on my toes. Standing in line for pantry, for food from the government. It's something missing from this story. It's not just as simple as they enslaved people from Africa, and y'all are not telling the whole truth. When I was in Bogalusa, I didn't even have access to books about African kings and queens, black goddesses and deities and gods. Knew nothing about that till I came back to New Orleans. But we didn't even have access to books about African royalty and indigenous deities. Those weren't the stories we were being told. And a lot of our own ancestors wanted to focus on the slavery narrative, to be clear. I heard about the viral clip from Jillian Michaels, and I saw it via Laverne Cox's platform. And I want to say this, because the children need to know that I'm hearing that from black people, that the children need to know about slavery. They don't need to come up uninformed about what happened to their ancestors. The first problem with this for me is that the history or the stories of our ancestors are already biased and partial truths. They're already half truths. One, some of the black people were prisoners of war. They were already here. We don't include that part. We tell the story as if all of the black people were imported like goods from another country. So in that lies a falsehood that is disrespectful to all people who wear melanin 365 days of the year until they leave this earth. That's a falsehood that has continued as a part of how our history or the stories of our ancestors are taught in this nation. And for the most part, people are okay with it because we're constantly regurgitating this narrative. Meanwhile, we're finding that black people are existing everywhere on this planet. We are not having the conversation in a way that acknowledges our ancestors who were already here, who were made prisoners of war. That's my first issue with how the stories are being taught and told to us. Secondly, why would we want to keep telling a story that starts from us being servants and slaves? Why wouldn't we want to at least tell the stories about our ancestors who were here, that were living off the land, who were farmers, who were connected to the land, who were strong and resilient caregivers to the earth? My opinion, the reason why we would want to tell those stories is because those stories don't influence us all to think that America is just this wonderful nation which everybody should want to participate in. And so, if you tell the stories about the people who occupy this land and you include deeply melanated people into those stories, then you have another story that begins to battle with the American dream. So, in order to encourage black people to reach for the American dream, you erase them as contributors to the civilization that existed before America became a thing. That's how you create that hamster wheel. By focusing on what America has become and who is celebrated in America. Now you got the hamster running, trying to get to a place in which it will never get to because the wheel is going to continue to turn and the goalposts are going to continue to be moved. So intentionally, let's not tell them of the beautiful things and the wonderful things that was happening here on this land before America became a thing. And black people were participating in that. Black indigenous people were participating in that, and they weren't slaves. Let's not talk about that. So that is another way in which the history of this particular landmass is distorted. Finally, because I don't want to belabor this video, slavery is not dead. We found out that slavery was existing well into the 1900s because of a lack of education, a lack of access, a lack of resources. People were still being manipulated, drowning in debt, and they had to work that debt off. So this was still happening well into the 1900s. Slavery was still existing, and slavery still exists now. Not even 30 years ago, I was living like a slave. From 20 to 29 years old. Then I went back again in my 30s. But I was going in and out of the jailing system, which is basically prison. And I was going to jail for trying to survive in a country that told me that I was an abomination. A country where the legislation had no protection for me as a queer, black, indigenous person. There was no protections for me. I had no access. I didn't come from money. I didn't have any resources. And so I was at the mercy of the police. I was at their mercy for simply trying to take care of myself. And this happens so many times to black indigenous people. You force us to live in neighborhoods with a whole bunch of unhealed, grief-stricken people because of the culture and the climate that you've created as a nation for countless reasons that I'm not about to go into because they're all over the place. Like, I saw statues of white people everywhere when I was a child. I went to schools named after white people and it wasn't no white people at the school. You created this grandiose image of yourselves as Caucasian people, and black people was just going to your schools. I'm at church, no white people in the church, but it's a white Jesus in the pulpit and a white John the Baptist in the pulpit. The psychic attacks that were played on us that left us vulnerable to the way that this world operates, and then the next thing you know, we go to prison for being simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what happens to you while you're in prison? You can be sexually assaulted. You can be beaten by both the prison workers and the inmates. I had to walk in chains for misdemeanor crimes, for being drunk in public, for disturbing the peace. I had to walk in chains on a chain gang from the place where we were being held to the courthouse. If that's not a humiliation ritual, I don't know what to tell you. I had cavity searches done to me for misdemeanor crimes. Bend over, cough, lift up this, turn around, bend over, let me look in your insides for being drunk in public, for disturbing the peace. 21 days sitting in a jailhouse for being drunk in public. In the French quarters where everybody is drunk. Mind you, during those times I was beaten, I was sexually assaulted, and I almost forgot the condemnation because the preachers was there regularly to condemn me and mock me and shame me for being different, for being queer. So on top of everything else that was happening to me in the prison, the sexual assaults, the humiliation rituals, the cavity searches, the chains, the disrespect, on top of everything that was going on, I was being condemned by people who looked like me, who were coming teaching the Christian religion. Kind of like how they do when they take over other countries. On one avenue, they're stealing your resources and waging war on you. And on the back streets, they're offering you Christ and shaming you for not being in line with how they feel Christians should act. And this was a regular occurrence. Had feces thrown at me, urine thrown at me, because we didn't want to do sexual favors with some of the other inmates. Y'all overlook that every day. Y'all don't interrogate that. The government is not interrogating that. Y'all don't care about reforming people. Government profits off of us just being in jail. And then when we come home from jail, we're so mentally skewed and messed up in the brain. We submit to society. We submit to society's perception of us. Jail is a grooming system for Black Indigenous people. It grooms them to stop fighting and to just accept how this country operates. And y'all want to focus on some stuff that happened 200 years ago, 300 years ago, when we got it happening right now. But this is how the Christian mindset works. Let's worship a man who died for us thousands of years ago rather than acknowledge all of the Black people, the Black Indigenous people who are continuing to die for us to this day, trying to make a change in this country. All of the ancestors who have suffered and died to bring change to this country, and y'all would rather focus on somebody who died thousands of years ago. It sounds about right. America has an illness that causes them to worship and idolize things from the past. So much so that you can't see the injustices, you can't see the sacrifice, you can't see the things that are happening right now. And so for that, it will not be a huge slap in my face or a huge hurt to me to have it removed from the history books, because it never served me anyway. Giving us this mentality of, well, that's how they've been treating us. That's how they've always saw us. That's how they've always seen us. This is nothing new. Our people have been struggling. In a lot of ways, it's helped us to normalize it. And I'm tired of being tired. I went to jail countless times for just trying to survive in a society that threw me away. Then you have Black men going to jail for carrying guns, and they're living in neighborhoods where their life is being threatened daily, but y'all telling them they can't have a gun. But y'all can have guns. We got the elitists and the status quo choosing who gets to hold the gun, who gets to carry arms. And if you get caught with a gun and you're black and you're poor and you don't have a job and you don't have a lawyer, you could go to jail and be doing years and years and years in jail. You got black people getting arrested for selling drugs, for selling weed, and for selling petty drugs, and y'all around here selling drugs, and literally when the commercial is talking, they telling you the side effects could be you could pass out, you could get another disease, you could get another sickness, you could get another illness. Like literally, y'all selling the most dangerous drugs in the world on TV every day. We don't know the long-term effects of half of these pharmaceutical medications y'all constantly pumping out. But a black man, a poor black person, a poor person in general could just get arrested and go to jail for years because they don't have access to a lawyer, they don't have access to resources. This country does not give a crap about poor people. Meanwhile, the black people who saying, you know what, I'm here for it, I'm gonna play the game, they get ahead. But the ones who like can't get right, they being sold off to the highest bidder. Black people who are on the spectrum, black people who process information differently. You think they get a chance to say, you think they're heard in court, that their brain functions differently? You think people care about that? No, they go to jail and they get mistreated, they get beaten, they get sexually assaulted, they get taken advantage of. Black people whose brain haven't finished developing, young children, first offenders making mistakes. You think this country cares? You think people care? Most of our own people be sitting up there saying, well, what did you do? Like you tell the assault victim, well, what did you do? What part did you play? You shouldn't have been doing this. You should have been doing that. Making excuses for what happens to us. So until y'all are willing to interrogate what's right in front of us, we've been talking about slavery for how many years, for how many decades? From the looks of it, things are getting worse. I definitely believe that we should pay attention to the past, we should honor the past, and we should have respect for the past. There needs to be a way of approaching this conversation that does not cause us to neglect the harm, the injustice that is happening to us today. And if we're going to talk about slavery, we also need to talk about the black indigenous people who existed on this landmass, who were thriving and who were happy before America became a thing. Because if you're going to play the tape, then play the whole tape. People aren't getting enough information to understand their options. It's more options than being a Christian Democrat or being a MAGA Republican. And right now, that's pretty much looking like the options. Red pill, blue pill. Patriarchy could not sustain itself. Racism could not sustain itself. Misogyny, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, none of these things could sustain themselves without collective agreement, without some handshaking on all sides behind the scenes. And until we are ready to deeply interrogate those things, I'm divesting from this conversation. You're not getting me all worked up about slavery when I literally have walked in my lifetime. I've walked in shackles multiple times for misdemeanor crimes. I have been in my 20s. I was humiliated, and I'm sure that a lot of that is still going on right now in the prison system. We have to do something different as a collective. And if we're not going to play the whole tape and we're not going to tell the whole truth, then we're no different than them. Because his story is written by the victor. And you got black people who went on ahead and fully immerse themselves in American culture, fully immerse themselves in white supremacy, fully immerse themselves in capitalism, and they overcame the odds of the slavery narrative, and they want us to center that as if that's the only way to thrive and be happy and be healthy and be whole and have integrity and matter in this nation. And so they erase their own ancestry. They erase their own narratives, and they continue to do it until this day. So until we shift from those voices, those minds, the ones who have been most indoctrinated by American culture, until we divest from allowing them to lead, orchestrate, facilitate, and guide the conversation, I'm not going to be getting all up in arms over the outcomes and how this works out, because this is the fruit of your harvest from erasing your own ancestry to further substantiate the narrative that you wanted to create for all black people, black indigenous people. Do with that information what you will. Take care and be well. And as I say in every video, Lelem Leler Nation, Purple Ones, rise.